1958, a book was published, authored by Eugene C. Gerhart. It was the first book of any note on the life of Robert H. Jackson. The preface states, "There are certain real advantages in commencing a biography during the biography's lifetime. Contemporary comment of living witnesses is available to the writer. The author is able to meet the biography personally and to examine in retrospect aspects of his past life with him. This valuable opportunity was afforded me by Mr. Jackson. Our first interview took place on October 8, 1947, our last on March 19, 1954, shortly before his first heart attack, which ultimately resulted in his untimely death on October 9th of that year. During this period of almost 7 years, we reviewed together in detail the important events of his life. At our last interview, he remarked, 'I think you have exhausted the sources.'" In 1961, Mr. Gerhart wrote a sequel. The reason he did so is that he had intentionally omitted a detailed analysis of Justice Jackson's Supreme Court opinions in the America's Advocate. In this supplemental study, Mr. Gerhart presented an analysis of Robert H. Jackson's work, not in the advocate's role he loved so well, but rather as a judge. That he was a, quote, "lawyer's judge," end of quote, few who knew him will doubt. I have the pleasure of introducing Eugene C. Gerhart, who was born in Brooklyn on April 7th, 1912. He did his undergraduate work at Princeton University, graduating in 1934, and received his law degree from Harvard University in 1937. Member of the New Jersey Bar in 1938 and the New York Bar in 1945. He practiced in Newark from 1938 to 1943 and in Binghamton from 1946 through now, which is in the law firm of Coughlin and Gerhart in Binghamton. His resume is extensive, and among the highlights is that he was the editor-in-chief of the New York State Bar Journal from 1961 onward. Today, we have the opportunity to hear his speech entitled, "A Tribute to a Great American Lawyer." Here is Eugene Gerhart, Binghamton, New York.
Very much, Greg. It's a pleasure to be here with you again and to add some additional thoughts in this tribute to a truly great American lawyer, Robert H. Jackson. It is indeed, as I say, a pleasure to contribute on this occasion to your splendid memorial honoring a great American lawyer whom we all admire and respect, Jamestown's son, Robert H. Jackson. It is entirely fitting and proper that we should do so. Bob Jackson left a great record as a county seat lawyer from Jamestown. He was outstanding as a United States Supreme Court justice. His part in the international trial prosecuting the Nazi war criminals at Nuremberg after World War I was unique. Here in Jamestown, New York, you really honor the memory of this great American lawyer of whom you can be mighty proud. Like Lincoln, Robert H. Jackson did not graduate from college, but his record proved, as his briefs and arguments proved, that he was most effective in his choice and use of words. Although he later got a degree from Albany Law School, he didn't actually graduate from the law school. He was already on the Supreme Court of the United States. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt wisely selected him to be the United States Attorney General. Justice Louis D. Brandeis of our Supreme Court praised his work in that office, saying, "Jackson should be Attorney General for life." As a Supreme Court justice, Jackson himself stood for integrity, honesty, and independence. When he differed as a justice in a case in which, as Attorney General, he had earlier advised President Roosevelt, he later changed his mind when the case came before the Supreme Court of the United States. With typical Jackson good humor, he said, "I see no reason why I should be consciously wrong today, because I was unconsciously wrong yesterday." My favorite Princeton professor of politics, Alpheus Thomas Mason, was proud of what he called his 18th century liberalism. Jackson, in my own opinion, was not a knee-jerk intellectual liberal. He was for the underdog when the underdog was right. But the underdog is not automatically right just because he is an underdog. Jackson's dissent in the Supreme Court decision involving the American concentration camps in World War II is worth quoting. Korematsu, born on our American soil, was an American citizen of Japanese ancestry. The Supreme Court permitted such people, although American citizens, to be incarcerated on the West Coast as part of a wartime military expedient. Jackson dissented, saying, "My duties as a justice as I see them do not require me to make a military judgment as to whether General DeWitt's evacuation and detention program was a reasonable military necessity. I do not suggest that the court should have attempted to interfere with the Army in carrying out its task, but I do not think that they may be asked to execute a military expedient that has no place in the law under the Constitution. I would reverse the judgment and discharge the prisoner." Korematsu versus the United States.